Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Nitish. Today, I'm going to talk about some important changes that went in our patch management solution that are very important in context to most of the infrastructure. There were two main reasons behind re-evaluating, our patch solution. For last over 6 months, we were struggling with Windows patch source repository building activities. There were some changes in Shablik metadata which started blowing up most of the infrastructure when it comes to updating a repository or rebuilding a repository when you have more than one language selected. We have seen impact in organization where there is no change that has gone in. They didn't change their infrastructure. They didn't upgrade the product from one version to another. But with everything remaining constant, the packaging started breaking for those customers. That was the main driving factor behind reevaluating, redesigning our patch management overall solution. So there were two streams that my team started evaluating. They started working on two main things. The first one was to try and understand as what changed from Shablik side, which started causing issues in our product, and two, evaluate our workflow once again, where we started talking to our customers, we worked with our partners, we looked at competition on the overall patching model that different product is using. We looked at the requirement from the customer base. We tried evaluating our own design when it comes to Windows patch source, when it comes to non-Windows repository construction. And considering all of it, we scheduled the whole redesign as a part of 8.3 release, which is scheduled for December. But for most of the customers, this has come as a big blocker because the repository building now takes over a week for them when they have more than one language, and they hit many issues over and over again for that. So I decided to backport most of these changes and release a hotfix which can make things easier for most of our customers who are on 8.2.01 or 8.2.02 release. Today, for this presentation, I'm going to talk about some very important and critical changes which impact 8.2.01 and 8.2.02 users. These changes are released in a hotfix which went out last week. We have had few customers who agreed on evaluating our hotfixes, and we were working with them for over a month now, taking their feedback, making incremental changes in the product. We have done good amount of QA on this new design, and we feel comfortable releasing a hotfix and announcing it to all the other customers. Some very important changes are highlighted in this particular presentation, which will be followed by a demo. I want to keep it very short and simple to make it easier for my users to understand. The first important change which has gone in the whole repository, the WPS channel, is introduction of a 64-bit segment for WPS. Now, WPS comes with a 64-bit segment for tuners that are running on a 64-bit kernel. So that means it applies to all the tuners which is running on 8.2.02 onwards. If you see from the product XML, so I have copied the channel from the products.marimba.com, and now I see a new segment here, which is Windows 64. This would go to my 64-bit tuner. If you see, there is a huge difference in the recommended heap settings now. We recommend users to set up a heap which is as big as 4200 megs. During the whole profiling for Windows patch source, we realized that the memory requirement, the heap requirement, when you select all locale from our solution, at its peak during processing of Shavlik XML for all languages, the memory jumps all the way to 4,000 megs, and that makes it very, very important and critical to have a 64-bit tuner hosting your WPS. It is strongly recommended, and it is somewhat mandatory for users with more than one locale in their environment. As I mentioned, during our profiling, we have identified that even for one language, which is the default language, English, the memory requirement go all the way to like about 1,000 to 1,200 megs heap. And that makes it very, very critical. If you use a 32-bit tuner, a 32-bit process comes with a 2 gigs of memory per process. And that includes the heap and non-heap memory. This is where our solution starts breaking when Shavlik increased their metadata size since last like 1 year. So when we compare Shavlik PD5 XML, it was about 3.5 megs, just a year ago. Last year, about September, it was about 3.5 megs. Now it is about 4.8 megs. At the start of 2012, it was close to about like 3 megs. So Shavlik is adding more and more product and patches in their metadata, and the product requirement to process that metadata is growing, and we need more memory to process that data. This is the reason why for most of the customers, even without changing any infrastructure, things started breaking. We have done profiling, and I will be presenting a different presentation about how the whole memory model changed when Shavlik increased the data, and why suddenly our product sort of like started breaking for most of the customer, where there was no change in the infrastructure or even the product side. So that is something which will be shared, and in the user group we will be talking more about it. I will be talking to most of the customers to present that side of the story. So yeah, 64-bit is very important, very critical. We strongly recommend 64-bit WPS tuner, which is hosting a 64-bit segment for WPS. And if you have more than one locale in your infrastructure, it is sort of mandatory now. So we are even thinking about adding it like a system requirement moving forward. But yeah, I mean, for customers, we understand upgrading their infrastructure may take some time. This is where I'm trying to give you a context about why this is important. What change we are doing now for this hot fix is compatible to 8201 and 8202 environment, and I will be talking more about it in my sections moving forward. Now, that was one very important thing. It was something which can help things running fine. But there were other part of it also that I explained, that the second part of our change was to re-evaluate our workflow and come up with an improved algorithm that can make things easier. This table talks about things which our WPS was acting like before and now. If you see, the most important change that we have done is to make it like a multi-threaded environment. It was single-threaded earlier. I mean, most of this, the data here is technical, but it makes sense when you come to the last part of this slide. Every time you update a repository with the older version of WPS, it used to update repository for all patches by default. And whether you update or repackage, it used to take almost same time. The new option comes with option to selectively update your repository. So I will be talking more about what are these options, but here with this, you can just go for updating your repository with few patches that are very critical to your environment. So Shavlik by default release about 13,500 patches, while in your organization you may be interested in few hundred of those patches. So while you are doing a packaging, you now get an option to only package those patches. During our evaluation, we found that the whole repository rebuilding, sort of like repackaging, takes less than 3 hours per language now, and update takes very less time, close about 30 minutes if there are 10 to 20 patches that you need to update. The most important change that comes in our redesigning is when you select multiple languages. The older algorithm was iterative, and for multiple language, during our formula analysis, we realized that it used to take a very long time, and I will try to keep it very simple with numbers. So if you select 2 languages, in the older case, it used to take 3 iterations of patches. So it will go through all 13,000 patches 3 times for processing 2 languages if you have selected, so say English and the German. While if you do it now, the number of iteration is 2. When you select 3 languages, the number of iteration used to be 6. So it is 3 plus 2 plus 1. That is how it was designed earlier, which was a huge flaw in the overall design. We changed it to make it like the number of iteration is equal to number of languages that we select. And as and when you grow your language, so if the number of languages are 4, it used to take 10 iteration in the older case. Now it takes about 4 iterations. So the more language you support in your organization, there are bigger performance benefit that comes straight away. Even for English, now with our new model, the whole language processing for English takes less than 3 hours. We are talking about a decent machine, which is a 64-bit tuner. We introduced a new option called scan and update metadata. So in the whole new cycle, we are talking about a new process altogether. So for our user, what they will do now is instead of doing an update repository or repackage or rebuild the whole repository, they go to a new option, which is scan and update metadata. When you do that, it will only scan the XML, identify all the updates, and update the database. Once the database is updated with the information, it will publish the patch info channel with the whole information. Please note that this new option would not do packaging only with this much. It will only scan the metadata and populate the database. So if you see, there is a new option here, which is scan and update metadata. This is all you need to select at the first stage. Once the scan and update of metadata is complete, you can do selective packaging. So you can go to your patch manager. You can create patch groups the way you used to create. It's a conventional process. There is no change in that. Once the patch group is created, or if you have already created a patch group, you can select the patch group. On your right click, you get a new option called update and package patch group. Once you select that option, the whole process sort of like repeats. It scans for all the patches if there is any change. Now we do this because we want to make sure that we are always updated in context to the new PD file which is there on the Shavlik server side. So if you have done a scanning, suppose yesterday, and if you do packaging today, if there is a change in the whole in the PD5 XML from Shavlik, we make sure that we get the latest one and check for any update. So it will scan. The whole process takes less than 20-25 minutes, and then it will package all patches that comes under a selected patch group. So in this example, if you see in the screen, there was a patch group which had only one patch. So when I do packaging, it will scan for any change, update metadata information, and it will only package this particular patch. Once this patch is packaged, the patch info channel will be published. You get a confirmation on the screen. Once you get a confirmation, the whole patch group can be published and the whole process will go as is. So the overall cycle go like this. You move to this version, you scan and update your metadata, then you create your patch group. Once patch groups are created, you just update patch group. So patches under patch group go for packaging, which are always updated, and then you just publish it to the server. Now, as I mentioned that this comes out in a hotfix, what are the upgrade steps for the users? For 8202 user, things are pretty simple because the tuner comes with a 64-bit segment. You obtain WPS hotfix channel from this location. You get the patch manager also, and you apply patch manager and WPS hotfix. Just the conventional process, read our upgrade document. As I mentioned, we recommend 64-bit machine and a 64-bit tuner for WPS. For 8201 users, things are somewhat different because that 8201 tuner doesn't come with a 64-bit segment. So you have two options. One, you can use a 8202 tuner for WPS, which is completely supported. So you can keep the whole infrastructure in 8201, but just upgrade your tuner to 64-bit for WPS machine and use WPS 64-bit segment of that. You can use Patch Manager, which is released like a hotfix over 8201, and your schema, CMS, everything can be in 8201. So this is the first option, which is a recommended option. But for user who doesn't want to move to 8202, or if your WPS machine itself is a 32-bit machine and you do not want to move to 64-bit machine straight away, you just need to copy 32-bit segment from the hotfix location. So WPS channel, only 32-bit segment should be copied. Do not copy 64-bit segment. Because if your machine is a 64-bit machine and you are using a 32-bit tuner, then also 64-bit WPS will come down to your machine, which is not a supported combination. So either you are on 8202 tuner, in that case you can have a 64-bit segment. If you are on 8201 tuner, you must only copy 32-bit segment. It is very important. The patch manager is released over 8201 because we want to keep it consistent with your CMS schema and all. So to keep it easier for the users, you can keep your 8201 infrastructure as is, upgrade patch manager to a 8201 hotfix, and you have two options for WPS. The recommended option is you keep a 64-bit machine, install 8202 64-bit tuner, and use our hotfix for 64-bit segment for WPS. Or if you don't want to use a 64-bit tuner for any reason, you should only copy 32-bit segment of WPS. You should not copy 64-bit segment. Now, as I mentioned, 32-bit tuner running a WPS will always have a risk for out of memory because the Shavlik metadata has grown up drastically. There is a way you can work it around, which is something I will be talking more in my next presentation, which will be shared to all of you. There is a way you can still tweak your memory, what are important settings you need to do. We will be talking more about it. But at this time, I just want to make it easier that you have these two options. At this point, I think we come to a point where I can just demonstrate the capability, what are the new options that I have explained. I can go over the logs here, or we can do like, I can take an option, start the repository update, show you what type of logs will come, which can keep things easier for you. So I have upgraded my WPS tuner, a WPS channel to a 64-bit segment. I go to patch manager from my CMS. This is a patch manager, which is a hotfix. It comes with a new option that I explained. Make sure when you copy WPS channel, you go to repository configuration, republish your configuration. It is very important because the whole settings need to be preserved. So this step is very important. Every time you override WPS configurator on your transmitter, you need to come to repository under configuration and just publish it once again. As I mentioned, if I come to this manage patch repository, I get a new option here. This is a scan and update metadata. When I select this option, the repository update will trigger. As I mentioned, it will just update the metadata. It will populate my database with all the information. So just to keep your database always in sync, every time there is a change in the metadata from Shavlik, all you need to do is to just scan and update metadata. It will not do any packaging at that point of time, which is very important. So you can scan and update metadata, which will populate your database and everything. In the log file, you will see new set of information. So what information it will start putting here is so the same set of information will be there in the log file, converting Shavlik XML, all of it. It reaches the second stage where it does the building of patch info files. Then it starts populating your database. You will see log messages like this: need to package, successfully inserted bulletin and all, which is how it was earlier. But at a very fast pace, it will do things. The whole update of a repository takes less than 20 minutes in my setup. So it is roughly about like 20 to 25 minutes. It will update the whole repository. So the whole repository update and everything will complete. It will print a message called update done for all the patches. This is a quick way to update your information on the patch repository. It will say that all the patches are completely done. Once the patches are done, you can come back to your patch repository. At this point, you can create your patch group, or if you already have a patch group, I have a dummy patch group here. I select a patch group and I see a new option called update package patch group. So all I need to do is to select this option. Once I select this option, the updating of a patch repository will begin. You will see this the status here. If you select this, it will say it is updating. So at this point, it will just initiate the whole process once again, as I explained earlier to you. On your log file, you should see. So at this point, it is trying to load the chunks from the existing patches. So these are the same thing that you used to see in your older code. We just wait for a minute or two to reach to a stage where Shavlik XML will get downloaded. And once the packages are loaded, this gets down to a stage where the HF7B and PD5, these are the two metadata information that Shavlik publishes. We attempt to download those files and convert them into our format for processing. So at this point, it is trying to download the file. So I'm trying to walk through the logs in parallel to give you all an insight about what exactly is happening behind the scene. While on the user interface, you will still see that the repository update is still going on. At this point, it has not done anything. It's just downloading the data, so added patches and deleted patches are like 0. Once it reaches the next stage, it has processed all the XML file. You would see a message like this, and it starts parsing the content of the XML to identify how many bulletins are there, how many patches are released, what are the affected products, what are the service packs, what's the relation, all this information, and then it gets down to processing the XML. So you will start seeing some messages, and it will reach into the stage 3, which is preparing the data. From the UI perspective, you will start seeing some changes in the added patches section. If you try to relate it with the older version, it used to be very, very slow. So there were 2 main modes of operation in our older version of repository update. If it go in DLL mode, which was Shavlik DLL, it used to process somewhere between 400 to 500 patches in an hour. If it goes into the EXE mode, it used to process only about like 100 odd patches per hour or something. Here, if you see, it is processing at a very higher speed. So as I explained, in this model, it is just in this option that I have selected, it is just scanning the patches, so the speed is much faster. But this speed will always be at the same pace. Even if we do a complete repository update, it will still process the patches at this faster pace. Behind the scene, it will be creating some temporary files, and it will be putting data processing packaging in parallel. So that is where I said that it is multi-threaded now. So that processing will happen in parallel. So for case where you are only doing a selective patching, it will first scan the whole patches, and it will only package the one that you have selected. In the case when you want to update the whole repository, it will start scanning, and at the same time it will do packaging for all patches, because there is no filter that is provided. I have a recording for that, which will be shared to all of you, which gives you details about what to see, what is the process when you do a complete repository update or packaging, irrespective of the patches. So you select everything and what happens then. So that is something we have already recorded, and we will be sharing that option also to most of our users about how to use it. So this whole patch update is going on right now. It reaches about like 2,200 odd patches. This generally takes about 20 to 25 minutes. Again, it depends on how many patches are released by Shavlik in their metadata. The one that I am doing right now for today, I have seen somewhere about 13,000 patches for the metadata. So at this point, it is about like say 20% done at this point. So we will have to wait for another 15 to 20 minutes to let this complete, and then I will show what is the next stage there. If you see on the log messages, you will continue to see messages like all of it that I have explained here. These are the same set of messages that you used to see in your older version for WPS. So it is just updating the database with all the bulletin information. So it will reach about 13,000 odd patches, and then it enters into the final phase of packaging. So let's just wait for that long time. I'm just going to pause it here, the recording, so that we straight away jump into the time when it completes this 13,000 patches. At this point, this is about 10,500 patches, and it has been about 14 to 15 minutes for the whole processing. So yeah, I mean, generally it takes about 20 minutes on a decent machine. Again, it is about a 64-bit machine. When you are using a 32-bit machine, the performance will be a bit slower. But generally, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for scanning the whole patches and identifying what are the patches that we need to package. So we'll just have to wait another 4 or 5 minutes before it get into the next phase. At this point, it has processed about like 12,652 patches. And on the log file, if you see, it gets into stage 4, where it is waiting for all the patches and service packs. At this point, if I go to the patch repository location, so I stored it at the drive patch repository. If you go into the packaging kit folder, you see a file here, pstore, with an extension pstore. So what happens when it get into the packaging job, it enters all the appropriate packages detail into this pstore file, and it processes them in batches. In the older case, we used to process one patch at a time by calling the Shavlik DLL, the library that they provide, or we used to call a exe to trigger. Here we process it at a batch of 500, so there will be multiple pstore file with records about like 500 records in that. So when you do a repository update for all patches in English, and suppose there are 12,500 patches, at that stage it will be creating about 25 to 26 pstore file. Here we have only selected one of the patch in my patch group, so it is going to create only one of the file, put that entry, and package it in parallel. So if you see on the log, it has completed and it has gone into the next stage, which is publishing of the patch info channel. And if you see, it just says that the whole patch repository building is complete here. So the patch info is published and the packaging for the selected patch is complete. So we selected only English locale. If I go back to this location on my repository, if you see it has the install batch, it has an install batch, all of it is created. So the whole process is started at about like, if I go to my case here, page 2, preview. It all started at 8:14 a.m. So this is our IST 8:14, and it has completed it in about like 8:30. So for selective patches, it generally takes about 15-20 minutes to do the packaging, which makes things much easier for the customers, because every time there is a new bulletin or there is a new Shavlik data that comes out, you may not need to package everything. You may only want to package the patches which are critical to your environment. So you do a scanning. The whole scanning takes about 15 minutes or so, 15-20 minutes. Once the scanning is complete, you can create your patch group the way I have created here. So these are the patches which were scanned recently, and based on this patch group, I get a new option to just do a update patch group from here. So if there is a change in a metadata and you want to update that, or if you want to only package, repackage, things are much simpler now, because these are the options which can be exploited. You always get the older option is there. You can select update or rebuild, which follow the conventional process, but it is again very, very fast. When I said update for over 12,000 patches, for English local it takes less than 3 hours. In a good setup, it takes about 2 hours to update, or even less than that. So we have some more presentation and demos which are recorded and will be shared to all of you. that explains about what are the stages when you do update, and what are the stages when you do a rebuild of a repository, and from the time perspective, what are the differences, that you would see in the log when you try to debug things and all. Things to note here is I'm using a 64-bit, so most of the explanation that I have provided is considering a 64-bit tuner. On a 32-bit tuner, there is some memory settings that need to be changed, even if you select only one locale, because if we are talking about 13,000 or 14,000 patches, as I explained, the memory requirement is pretty big, and 32-bit tuner comes only with a 2 GB of memory per process. That complicates the whole equation, because the tuner, it's a Java process. It takes somewhere about like 300 to 400 megs memory just to load the whole binary for the agent. And when you have the repository, which needs about like 1 gig of heap, we need to change the perm gen. We need to change the size per thread, which is the XSS option. We need to change the virtual memory setting. So there is a memory profiling that we have done for 32-bit tuner, and we will be sharing that also. Please note that on that particular demo, you will also see options where you can yourself evaluate what are the differences in Shavlik metadata when you take a data from last year, January, try to load the data which is last year, September, and try to load the data which is as recent as now, and you try to see with the same memory settings, you will see difference in behavior. You will see out of memory, you will see the repository taking the exe mode because of this metadata change. So this summarizes everything that I wanted to present in this demo. At any point, if you have any question, you can reach out to me directly, or you can write to our support team. We strongly recommend you to move to this version if you are on 8201 or 8202. This helps big way. It gives flexibility, it gives you option, and in turn will help you meet your organization SLA in absolutely no time. So for one of our customers, they are a large customer. They have patch groups which deals with about like 1,000 patches. With this option for 4 languages, they can complete the whole repository building in about 7 to 8 hours. It is as fast, which used to take over 3 to 4 days for them in past, because we used to process everything. Well, that is all I have. There will be different presentations sharing, which we will be sharing across to all our users, which will have detail about only 32-bit. As I said, this is something we strongly recommend. All of it that I have shared will make it to 8.3 release, which is going to have some more enhancement for patch, but most of these were backported for hotfixes, because we want to help our customers meet SLA even for the next 2 or 3 months moving forward. So thank you all for attending this this presentation. If you have any question, drop me email. You can call me, or you can reach out to our support team for details. Thank you.